Welcome back to DissedMedia, a startup story, the podcast where I take you along our journey of starting DissedMedia from the ground up. You get to hear all about our challenges and accomplishments as we either grow DissedMedia or go bust. Either way, you're going to have a front row seat to hear it all. And along the way, we're going to have some special guests who share with us their wisdom and insights and what helped them along their startup journey to success. So get ready as we get into it and try to help those get better at what they do. Welcome back, everybody, to DissedMedia, a startup story, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of starting DissedMedia from the ground up. And, you know, we've been having a party lately with a lot of special guests, but I have to say the guest I have today, no disrespect to the others that I've had so far, but this is one that I've been very excited about because the history, the background, the knowledge, some things selfishly that I hope I will learn in this episode because, let's face it, when you start doing something like this, and I think sometimes it's the fear that a lot of people have, like, I don't want to put stuff out there. I'm afraid what people are going to say. Are they going to judge me? Are they going to make fun of me? Yeah, but who cares? Like, do it because you love it. And that's why we're doing it. So today we are joined by Cliff Ravenscraft, and Cliff is a veteran in this podcast medium. He started his own podcast network way back in 2005, has coached and mentored many a person on this journey of making a show better. Cliff is going to tell us whether we are redeemable as a show or not. I didn't tell him that ahead of time, but maybe he will. And has done just a flurry of speaking events, has written on this topic, has coached people on this topic. Cliff, welcome to the show.
Ben, thank you so much. It is an honor to be here. And I can tell you right now, it's redeemable for no other reason that I get to have this opportunity to have a conversation with you. I assume that there's somebody listening to us. And if that person's listening to us and it's not your mom, I would imagine you're doing something great. So thank you so much for the honor of being here.
No, thank you. One of the reasons that I started DissedMedia, and one of the reasons I started this podcast, so the business was to marry a bunch of passions that I had around business and academia. The podcast is because I have a creative energy to me and I like an outlet in which to, expel that. And it has really been chronicling the start of DissedMedia as a business from the very beginning. We've had a board, we've had people join, we've had people leave, gone through some personal things here and there. And this season 3 is where I've decided to really just dig in and relentlessly do this thing week after week, keep people informed of what we're doing, but also, share wisdom from people like yourself who have done this kind of work and starting a network. I mean, let alone a show. Like, a show is hard enough. A network back in 2005 when people were just barely coming off of talk radio, if you liked listening things, or audiobooks, if you liked listening to stuff in your car. Help me understand that journey. What prompted you to get into this medium and go at it by starting a network?
Sure. It's a fun story. So I was introduced to podcasting right after it was invented by Dave Weiner and Adam Curry. I read about it in a blog post by Leo Laporte, somebody I used to watch on a tech network.
Yeah, Tech TV. Love Leo Laporte.
As soon as he launched his podcast, I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. Obviously, I subscribed to him. I found out about Adam Curry's podcast and then a bunch of other podcasts. And I'm like, this is the only kind of content I ever want to consume. I get to choose topics that I'm interested in, and I can listen to it on demand. I can stop at any point and pick up where I left off. This is fascinating. Also, no gatekeepers. I loved the fact that anyone could launch a podcast. And I loved the people that I was finding, these non-professional, non-corporate people who are out there talking about topics that I love. And my wife and I were watching a television show called Lost. She had introduced me to it. And it became very clear that there's a lot more to the show than what in the episodes. There were hidden clues.
Yeah.
And I was blown away to learn that there was already a number of podcasts, and multiple, there were 5 or 6 at the time, devoted to the TV show Lost. 6 different people had launched a podcast and either had a co-host and or a panel of other people on each of those shows. And as a result of it, they did all of this research, and I got to benefit from all of the hidden clues and all of the theories and Easter eggs, everything about the show. And when it came time to go talk to anybody in my personal life about the television show, I said, "Did you see this? Did you see this?" They're like, "No." I'm like,
how did you learn all that?
That's exactly it. How did you learn all of that? So it made you the hero of the water cooler. So I was subscribed to all of these podcasts and all of the Lost podcasts, plus a handful of other shows that I found around other passions that I had. And I began blogging about the TV show Lost, inspired by what I was learning on the television show, on the podcasts about the show. But I also came up with my own theories. Now, I had been blogging for a decade at that point. I started blogging in 1996. And I had maybe 300 people on a monthly basis who checked out my blog. However, when I started blogging about Lost, it grew to about 1,000 or so. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I'm loving this. I'm listening to all this content. One day I came up with my own theory that I was so convinced about. I went and took screen captures from one episode and put it side by side with another episode. I had all of my evidence to support it, and I wrote this blog post about what I called the Thomas theory. I recorded a 3.5-minute MP3 file of me giving commentary about my blog post with a call to action to come check out my blog. And I sent that to Ryan and Jen Azawa in Hawaii. They hosted the Transmission podcast.
Wow.
They had tens of thousands of subscribers of all around the world, and they played my audio file that weekend. The next morning, I woke up and pulled up my blog, and it said, "Account suspended, bandwidth exceeded, contact billing department." So I'm like, what's going on? And so they said, you actually have over 1 million hits on your thing. You owe us, and it was an exorbitantly large amount of money for bandwidth for all these images that got processed and sent out to all these people. And I'm like, what the heck happened? What happened was that somebody from Entertainment Weekly listened to that podcast episode and wrote an article on EW.com talking about my theory and linked to my blog.
Wow. That's, first of all, congratulations, because I can tell you, doing what we've been doing for a little over 2.5 years, you wait for somebody to like pick it up and get a good backlink.
Yep, that's exactly right. And so this all just happened. And by the way, all of this is just a hobby. I'm playing around for fun. I'm not looking to build a business. I had an incredibly successful career as an insurance agent at the time. So I get all that solved. My blog's back up and running. And I start getting all of these people who are emailing me, leaving me comments. "Cliff, I heard your audio feedback, your voice, the way that you communicated that, the way you put all this together. You need your own podcast." And I got to say that I was a lot more driven by ego and pride back in the day than I am today. And it didn't take a lot to stoke that. And so I'm like, sure, I'll create a podcast. Now, the interesting thing is that when I launched my own podcast, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start a podcast. But I didn't think that I could bring the same level of insight and depth that all these other shows. Really, I'm benefiting from their hard work.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know if anybody really wants to hear about me talk about Lost. Maybe occasionally, but not every week. And then I thought, what other passions do I have? I love technology, But again, I'm like, I'm on the fringe of what I know, and what I know, I listen to all the people, and I'm borrowing from all of their stuff. And so I came up with this idea of creating a podcast called Generally Speaking. And the idea is that my podcast is generally speaking. I'm going to generally speak about different topics. And I know that not everyone is going to be interested in everything I'm interested in talking about. So each episode will be a subject. So Lost, and then I'll put the title Lost in the title, or the phrase Lost in the title, and then a title episode, or an episode title. And so if you don't want to hear my technology podcast, if you see technology as the keyword in the title of the episode, just delete that episode. I went through it, explained all of this, and then I started talking about Lost in that first episode after I introduced the concept of Generally Speaking with Cliff Ravenscraft. I sent that out, had about 500 subscribers, and as a result, downloads within the first 24 hours. And that's because of what happened as a result of Entertainment Weekly. And I put it on my blog. Then what happened was people emailed me and said, Cliff, wow, just listen to your podcast. By the way, have no interest in hearing about you talk about technology. Have no interest in hearing you talk about faith. If you did an episode only talking about Lost, I am subscribing to this podcast. And if it were just one person, that'd be one thing, but multiple people said that. And I'm like, okay. So I went to my wife and I said, do you want to co-host this show with me? You're the one who introduced me to the show, Lost. Let's you and I just have a conversation about this show. And she said, sure. This sounds like one of your crazy ideas you'll be into for 6 weeks and then it'll be done. Yeah, that's fine. Turned out to be 6 years, by the way. The second episode, I said, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Generally Speaking podcast, or the weekly Lost edition of the Generally Speaking podcast network. Because I knew I was going to create another show about technology. I knew I was going to create another show about faith. I knew I was going to create another show about all of these other topics. And every podcast would be a specific niche topic. And it would either be a solo hosted show by myself and or some other subject matter expert guest that I would have to co-host, or a panel or an interview. So that's what happened is I started with the TV show Lost. But after the second episode went live, the guys who had all of those other podcasts about the TV show Lost, they had created a single Blogger account when Google purchased Blogger. And they consolidated. Everybody had their own Lost podcast subscriber base and their own Lost podcast feed, but they all shared a Blogger account called the Lost Podcast Network. And they said, hey, Cliff and Stephanie, we'd like to invite you to syndicate your show into the network as well if you desire.
Nice.
We don't own anything. It's just that we all benefit from this larger audience.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sure. So the third episode went live, and combined between our own individual feed and the Lost Podcast Network feed, our third episode was downloaded by 27,000 people around the world.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot there to unpack. So for those who are not familiar, because I've been podcasting off and on for probably about 10 years now. And when I first started, you had to have somebody who would host your file, and you had to pay something for that. Now there are a lot of tools. Everybody just wants you because they know that there's a monetization scheme on the back end for, a lot of these folks that do it. So there's more openly available tools. It's easier to do today than it used to be. But I mean, back then, just recording audio into a computer that would run fast enough to pull in all the tracks and keep everything, fine. And then compressing it, editing it, compressing it, downloading it, uploading it. It was a chore. And you're doing this for how many shows?
Well, that was our first show. And by the way, I started 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. That's
so
what I'm saying.
there were no tools. There was no podcasts hosting companies out there.
No.
No, some of us were either paying incredibly large bandwidth bills with our media hosting provider, or we would upload to archive.org, which would be ridiculously slow download speeds. But we got free hosting that way.
Right.
Eventually, there were other solutions that came about, and eventually Libsyn was one of the first podcast media hosting services, and then it was a flat fee, and I'm like, oh, thank goodness. And the way that we used that service,
part of what I'm getting at here, though, is that you have to really love this. Because number one, like at that stage of what you're doing it, I can't imagine that there's a big revenue stream. Like there's
not initially.
Right.
I would love to get to that part of the story, but yeah, let me tell you, this is hours and hours. We're talking.
You gotta love it.
Just one show was between 5 to 10 hours a week.
Oh my gosh.
I was hand coding my RSS feed with a text editor.
Okay.
And uploading and replacing via FTP the original RSS feed every time there was a new episode. It was ridiculous. But to your point, then I added other shows. People started listening to the Weekly Lost podcast, and we were talking about episodes like Tabula Rasa, starting over with a clean slate. And my wife and I would talk about different stories of how that resonates with us. And there was an episode called All Good Cowboys Have Daddy Issues. And Stephanie shared her story with her dad, and I shared some stories about my dad. We started getting hundreds of emails every week, people asking us very personal questions related to what was going on in that episode. We didn't want to respond in that podcast because it was devoted to Lost. Initially, I started replying to everyone, but I'm like, man, the same questions are coming in. I began asking people, can I read your email in a podcast and respond to it so that I can send you a link? And that way I can send the same link to everyone else who asked the same question.
Yeah.
And people said yes. Some people gave me permission to use their name. Some asked to remain anonymous.
You're on the early stages of the live read.
Yes. And so I started launching other podcasts related to faith, family, parenting, all these different business technology, Help I Got a Mac, just all of these different podcasts. Within 6 months, I have 10 different podcast shows. My wife and I also started other entertainment-focused podcasts on Grey's Anatomy, Desperate Housewives, Doctor Who, a couple of other television shows. Eventually, we did one on the Hunger Games books and then movies, the Twilight Saga books and then movies. So we created all of this other content. Within 6 months of starting as a hobby, I had 10 different podcast shows publishing 7 to 15 episodes a week.
Nice. That is, wow. That is, so at what point did monetization happen? Did people start reaching out and saying, hey, could you plug this? And, there's the whole stamps.com and,
Oh, yes. So before stamps.com, there were, especially for us as an entertainment podcast network, we actually had DirecTV, Time Warner Cable.
Oh, nice. Oh, because you're doing entertainment-based stuff, so why not?
Exactly. And they were paying very high CPMs at the time. They're like, listen, as long as you mention us, put the link in the show notes, we'll keep cutting you checks.
Nice.
And so that started rolling in. Then there was a service at the time called TalkShoe. And TalkShoe allowed people to dial in by telephone, and we hosted and streamed our show live and took in live call-ins. And this company was a startup, and they had lots of VC funds. And their model was, hey, host all of your media files with us, host all of your shows here, and when you do them live, do them on our platform. And eventually we will have advertisers and we'll dynamically insert ads into your content. But until then, we're gonna pay you to host because we don't have any advertisers yet, but we see the value in what you're bringing to the table, and having your content will help us show what advertisers can have access to. And so I won't say how much money, but it was a significant amount that I was making monthly from this particular service saying, listen, we're going to continue to pay you and give you free hosting and all of this other stuff. And I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So
Well, though, at this point, have you broken away from insurance, or are you still
not
juggling
yet.
both things?
So let's just say 1 year into this, I began to start seeing the writing on the wall, if you will. Basically, people were like, Cliff, the content that you're creating is having such a profound impact in my life. I can't thank you enough. And I've always had a heart for ministry and service to others. And I don't know, I will explain for those who are listening in audio only, but I'm holding up a box here, a wooden inbox that has over 300 handwritten letters, thank you cards, and postcards from people all over the world. 3 of them are individuals who said, I chose not to commit suicide because of something you shared in your podcast.
Wow.
And I began to ask myself this question. I wonder what life would be like if I could do this for a living instead of selling insurance. Now, I began talking about that publicly in my content after about, I'd say 13, 14 months into this whole journey. And people started responding. Hey, Cliff, I'd love to jump on a call. I'd like to tell you, I've never had a job as an employee my entire life. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've got 15 different ways you could make money doing what you're doing. I'd love to encourage you. I'd love to inspire you. Dude, you were made for this. There were so many people who saw in me what I couldn't yet see within myself. But I did listen to all of those people, and every conversation I had, I came home and I talked to my wife and told them everything that she said, or told her everything they said. And after 18 months, oh, by the way, one other thing that I want to tell you, the number one email that I ever received from everyone was, how on earth do you produce so much content? How can you possibly produce 15 episodes a week doing this part-time outside of your day job? And so many of them like, Cliff, you've got to show me your process. And so I would just jump on for free. I'm like thrilled somebody wants to talk about podcasting with me. Wow, because nobody in my hometown gives a rip about what I've got going on, and they just want to talk about sports, and I'm just not interested in that. So this is amazing. Yeah, let me tell you. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. After an hour, they're like, you should let me pay you for this. Oh, dude, I should pay you for letting me share this.
Yep.
But eventually, I had enough people say, you should definitely start charging for this, Cliff. And I'm like, how much should I charge? And they said, just try it out, $100 an hour for some folks. And so I actually did an hour-long webinar and invited up to 10 people to join me. And I wondered, would people pay me $100 for that hour? What happened was, yes, I had 10 people pay me $100 for 1 hour. I'm like, wow, that was pretty impressive. And one person had reached out to me afterwards. And he says, Cliff, can I talk to you? And I'm like, oh, man, is this guy going to want to
He's going to want his money back.
Anyway, we got on a call, and he says, Cliff, I just returned from a conference where I spent 5 days. I invested about $3,000 to pay for the event, and probably another $2,000 in other miscellaneous expenses, and spent a week away from my business. I got more value in 1 hour on your webinar than I did from that entire conference professionally. You have to charge more.
It just goes to show that I think a lot of times, and I know I've done it, we don't really because we do it all the time. We love it, and we don't think about it, but we don't realize how valuable what we know is to other people who aren't quite up to speed on it yet.
Yeah. So I started doing one-on-one coaching and consulting. I was hosting some webinars, Ask Me Anything, answering questions. I had some sponsors. I even had people donating money, like just sending us money in the mail. And at the about 18-month mark into our journey, I was bringing in somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 a month every single month. And this is just me doing this part-time. This is after my most high creative energy, most effective, the best hours that I have to offer are devoted to my day job. This is me just earning this with whatever energy I have left over to give.
Yeah.
And one day I came home. I had an excruciating day at the day job. I'm like, man, I'm so bored here. I couldn't wait to come home. I just wanted to create the next podcast episode. My wife's, okay, you and I both know that this is what we're being called to go and do. Tomorrow you're going in and you're giving a notice. You're leaving the day job. I didn't tell you, by the way, that the day job, the insurance agency, I was an auto, home, life, health, and business insurance agent in a family-run insurance agency owned by my mom and dad and started by my grandfather in 1937.
Okay. So you're stepping away from the path.
Yes. So the next day, after 18 months of podcasting as a hobby, I went into my dad and said, I'm leaving the family business. I know I'm next in line to take it over. And I thought for sure he was going to try to talk me out of it. He's like, it's like, and in fact, I was in some ways kind of hoping he would, because I was like freaking out about this decision anyway. And he said to me, and it shocked me, he says, you know how much money you could make here if you stay. As soon as I retire, this place is yours. You know how much money you could make. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I'm going to tell you right now, you could never make as much money here as what you were about ready to make going and doing what you most love to do in the world.
Well, yeah. It's not always about the money either, because you're probably, I would imagine, not that you hated what you were doing, but so much more into it versus what you were doing before. There's happiness, you're doing well, nobody's arguing, but then you have this opportunity to level up and do something even greater than that and come away from it feeling great every day.
Yeah. For me, it was very clearly not about the money, because I left about the best money you could possibly make at my stage in life at the time. And my first year of full-time self-employment, I became full-time self-employed in January 2008. And up until that point, I'd lived a lifetime as an employee.
By the way, if the world is listening, what was going on around 2008? Yep. Probably not the best time to go solo, right?
Or maybe the perfect time to go solo.
Yes, as where we're at today, probably so. But I would imagine. Let
me explain why.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I thought I was leaving my career as an insurance agent so I could sit behind a microphone and talk all day, every day. But what I recognized is, wow, there's even more people who are willing to pay me to teach them everything they need to know to successfully launch a great sounding audio podcast, because millions of people around the world have been laid off. They are experts in their field, and they want to become a thought leader and create their own self-employed lifestyle. And they need to build a platform, and podcasting was the one avenue among everything else that had the best to offer for building your personal brand.
That is so well said. And to think that you had that opportunity, I'm going to say twice, because not too long after that, we all remember COVID. And this is exactly what happened again, is that everybody once again decided that, hey, I'm home. I got a bunch of time. I got a phone that does amazing things now. I'm going to start a YouTube channel, or I'm going to start podcasting. And it has really turned into a thing.
Yeah. But going back to the money thing, though, my first year of full-time self-employment, from January 1st, 2008 to December 31st, 2008, My total net personal income after taxes and business expenses, my take home pay after taxes for the year was only $11,000. I did not pay myself a single paycheck for the first 9 months, and I just barely eked out enough money to pay myself a paycheck. But it had more to do with my mindset around money and charging people money for things that I love to do. You see, I felt like I should be paying people money for me to get to do what I love. And I had these beliefs like nobody gets paid to do their hobby. And the harder something is, the more valuable what you do is. And nothing I'm doing is hard. It's all easy. I could do it in my sleep. And in fact, sometimes I do it in my sleep. But I worked for the first 9 months, 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day without a single day off for 9 months and no pay personally. And again, at the end of the first year, I only made $11,000 net income. And that's just because I did not have the mindset of a business owner. I had the mindset of a guy who spent his entire lifetime up until that point as an employee.
Yeah.
And I did not know what I didn't know about operating a business and charging and pricing products and services in a way that's responsible and sustainable. And so I ended up, as a result of the number of hours that I worked, I ended the year with a 24-hour nonstop podcast marathon. I produced 24 one-hour podcast episodes in 24 hours, publishing them as I was recording the next episode. And at the end of that, I celebrated with 2 weeks in the hospital where I almost died because of it.
My God. Was stress, fatigue, just wore yourself out?
Stress, fatigue. I destroyed my gallbladder. I had massive gallstones. One was stuck in my cystic duct. I was a mess. And I weighed almost 300 pounds at the time.
So
it was ridiculous.
So you launch your new career path during the financial collapse, people losing their homes. You make $11,000 that year. It puts you in the hospital. And you're like, yes, more, please.
That's exactly what it was. Number one. So the question was, do I go back and get my insurance job? Heck no. That was the best year of my life. It was also the worst year of my life. And I'm talking, it was the worst as the worst you could possibly imagine. I've never had so much depression, fear, anxiety, self-doubt.
Oh my God.
Everything. And I've also never experienced such highs, such pure bliss, such absolute alignment and knowing for a fact I am doing exactly what I feel I was put on this earth to do. Wow. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And I never even knew the term emotional intelligence. And quite frankly, I was a mess emotionally. And so after I got out of the hospital, I decided I should probably shift some things around here. Some things need to change a little bit. I began a personal and professional development journey. For the very first time since college, I started reading books again, like The 4-Hour Workweek and just all of these other books, 48 Days to the Work You Love by Dan Miller. And I began to all of a sudden see how I've completely misjudged what it means to be a business owner. And I've totally failed to implement some of the most foundational pieces of operating a business. And one of them is knowing exactly what I want my life to look like. I'm like, I just need to put enough food on the table for my family, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And I just like, who's my audience and what can I do to earn enough money? And that's kind of how I approached it. And I'm like, oh, boy, I would never do that again. And the problem is people were signing up to have me teach them how to podcast. And they're like, Cliff, the reason why I signed up for you to teach me how to podcast because I want to do what you did. And I'm like, no, I don't want you to do what I did. Oh my gosh. But the thing is these people had already paid me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it's the model, right? They want to replicate the model.
Exactly. And I'm like, I will teach you how to podcast, But you need to understand that if you want to get to the place where you're profitable and you're earning income, I've developed an 11-step process for building a successful, profitable online business around coaching and courses and being a thought leader. And starting your podcast is step number 8. And if you start with your podcast, you're in for a lot of struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting as I reflect on my own journey doing this. Like I said, I mean, I've done a couple podcasts, different show names, different titles. But what I learned in those other attempts was how to get better at it, be more efficient. Still not always the best speaker, like ahs and ums just kill me. But the tools have gotten so much better. The workflow efficiencies have gotten so much better. And as I hear how you're doing this, and I'm remembering what it was like back in the day. I've been building computers since high school. I've been tinkering with software and databases forever. Like I know the pain that you've gone through hearing your story and knowing what it takes to bring something into production quality. There are so many things that you need to do to make it sound good, be concise, have your timing down, be entertaining, be engaging, all of that. And then again, you started a network of multiple shows. I can't imagine doing, well, I shouldn't say that. I do imagine doing that. It would be where we would love to take DissedMedia to. But Cliff, one of the things that is interesting about what you have to say is the fact that, like, I, similar to you many years ago, I do this as a side. I don't like to call it a hobby. I don't like to call it a side hustle or project because it's something I really do enjoy doing. But we've made no money. We're a Delaware C Corp. We could raise funds if we needed to. We haven't done anything like that. Partly because, as you talked about on your own journey, you're trying to figure out, well, what is that? What's the product really? And if anybody's been listening to the podcast, a couple of our guests have even brought that up. Like, what is your product? What are you selling? What is it that you're trying to get out of people? And there's a point of this too, that are we unique enough in our value proposition for other people? We put a lot of information and content out there for free, but we do need to break through to how do you raise revenue? How do you charge for what you do? How do you make, the company profitable and sustainable? And, something I've even mentioned in other podcasts is like, let's just see how long this thing runs. We're either going to flame out or, something's going to happen and, we'll get enough to stay afloat and keep going. But right now, I would say, like, everything that this company does, everything that we do, 100% driven by me. I do all everything with the website, build it, run it, everything with the social media, everything with the podcasting. And it's all, at this, we're in the red, but doing it because we continue to love it.
I'd love to say something about that. I can tell you right now, doing what I was doing just because I love it certainly got me through that first year.
Yeah.
But I would not be in business today if I stayed on that path.
I would not imagine.
So eventually I figured out some things. By the way, eventually I shut down my podcast network and all of my shows that were the big money makers from the sponsors and all of the donations that were coming in from large audiences. Because ultimately I found out I found a product to market fit. The biggest thing for me at the time was, wow, I could benefit the most number of people and add value to their lives in a way that in exchange they would each give me $2,000 a piece to teach them how to launch a podcast within a 4-week course called Podcasting A to Z. And I would do 20 students at a time for 4 weeks. That's $2,000 times four. I'm sorry, $2,000 times 20 students. So that was $40,000 in a single month. And I would do that every other month. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And so, but to be able to do that in the off months to market and fill the next course, I needed to stop all this other free content that was I was reaching hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of people and making $28,000 a year from that. Whereas I was reaching about 10,000 people and making $300,000 to $500,000 a year as a podcast consultant and coach. I'm like, okay, I love all of that. And what I'd love to do is I'd love to continue to do bits and pieces of that for free and still do it for fun, but I'm going to earn my money over here first. And so I began to take a bit of a unique approach, a money first approach. How much money must I earn every single month in my business? And then I said to myself, I won't do any of this other stuff unless I first have taken care of my financial responsibilities and my financial commitment. And so I'm like, this business must generate $20,000 minimum every month, or else I don't do any of the other stuff for fun. And so I began that product. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, that's where I discovered, okay, I need to figure out a formula for my target audience. It became very clear. I need to reach people with money who have a problem that has lots of pains associated with that problem. They have to be aware that they have that problem. And by the way, that person, the person with money, the person with the problem, has to be willing to pay to have that problem solved. I have to be able to solve the problem. And number 5, if I want to succeed long term, I have to enjoy doing it. And for me, that was teaching people how to podcast. And so I went all in on that. And eventually I got to the place where I was making somewhere between as little as $300,000 a year. And 1 year I made $750,000 in one 12-month period of time teaching people how to podcast. Over the course of a decade, I've trained more than 40,000 people in launching a podcast. So it has been an incredible journey. And what I've done since, back in 2017, I decided to leave teaching people how to podcast because most of the people who wanted to learn how to podcast wanted to also leave their day job and have a profitable business that allows them to do work that they love and have more time freedom to spend time with their family and to go out on vacations and be location independent. The only problem is they were starting with the podcast. And it's no, you don't start with the podcast, build a large audience, and then try to find a way to make money from it. Instead, decide first what your dream life looks like. Where do you want to go? How many hours do you want to work? Then once you have that, determine how much money you must generate with your business to earn that much money. And then ask yourself, who are the clients out there who have a problem that they are willing to pay that much money for you to solve it? And then do that math, go do that thing. And if you could overcome your limiting beliefs about how much money you charge, and by the way, I can point you to a few different resources that will eliminate your limiting beliefs about money, and then you charge way more than you ever have been comfortable with before, now all of a sudden, I can actually earn at least $240,000 a year working only 10 hours a week. And so I'm like, wow, now I can actually take care of my minimum of this. I can earn a lot more if I want to, but I only need to work 10 hours a week to earn $240,000 a year minimum. And that leaves me my other 30 hours to do whatever I want. And now I can actually create content, which is why I now have, I'm back to producing lots of free content for the world, but not expecting any of those people to pay me anything.
Wow, I love that. So, Cliff, let me ask you this. I'm gonna share with you a little bit of my inspiration, what I'm driving at, why I'm doing all this stuff. Because similar to what you just explained there, I most of what I do is free, right? This
Mm-hmm.
podcast free, the Daily Pitch website free, business information and insights. Have a learning platform that we are working on. That's going to be nominal charges, but really, one of the things that I have recognized is that there are people in my age, Gen X, right? There are people in my age bracket and even older who are coming off of decades in careers and looking to do something new. There's a big
Yep.
there's a big wealth shift going on where boomers and older are leaving their estates to their children, and that's giving people more wiggle room to make different decisions about their careers. And what I find is that I see a lot of people oftentimes on LinkedIn, they go out, they want to start consulting, they want to start, doing something independently. And the problem they have is they have no platform. They've spent their life in a career. They don't have a social media following. The people that they know are all LinkedIn people. And what I'm trying to do is give a platform and a voice to people like that, where you can be a contributor on the Daily Pitch. You can get recognized there. You can come on this podcast. We can talk about your profession, what you do. I have multiple social media channels that I pump content out through all the time, and the audience continues to grow. And what I'm trying to do is build a place for people to plug into that. While at the same time, for people looking for all this wisdom, information, insight, and business news and stories like what you have, allowing people to learn from that, get there faster, help people improve their skill set, all while building an audience for that. That is at the core of the ecosystem that we are building here. And my approach thus far has really been, well, let's do this by building an audience. And part of the experiment when we started this podcast was, let's start a business with no followers, with no social media, with nobody knows who we are. Let's just go out there and see how tough it is to build it from nothing. And that's kind of what we've done to where we are today is built it from nothing. What do you think of that?
There's a question. Is for it to be a business to generate profit, there must be an audience who has a problem that they're willing to pay to have solved, and you have to have a product or service for them to purchase your solution. Do you have that?
I do not believe that I do. Okay. I think that I have recognized the problem. I don't know that I've really...
The problem I heard you state is that you've got these people who are out there and they need a platform and they don't have one. And by the way, that's the same problem that I solved for people in 2008 and forward by helping them launch their platform as a podcast. And I did that by first working with them one-on-one, helping them personally come up to speed on the technology necessary, how to set it up, how to create your content, how to outline your content, how to edit your content, how to publish your content, and or help them develop a system of people that they could hire to do that for them, but still coach them through the process.
Yeah.
That's something that audience will pay you anywhere between $2,000 to $10,000 for.
Got it. Yeah, I think that... it's interesting, over the last couple episodes that I've done this podcast, I keep coming back to what you outlined there, which is, what is the product? I love what we're doing with the website and the podcast. Like, I to me, that is the labor of love. But I think you're 100% right. I think the revenue lies in the expertise of really helping people hands-on get this education.
Yeah. I mean, your platform, you're allowing me to be a guest here. Even if there's only 5 to 10 people who are listening to our voice that resonate with my voice, if those 5 to 10 people were to respond to a call to action at the end of our conversation, and one of them becomes a client, that's $15,000 in my pocket.
Very good point.
But it doesn't do anything for your revenue. Now, the thing is, it does a lot for reciprocity. You are expanding your professional network, Ben, by giving me this opportunity. I now know who you are, and every time somebody comes on board, it's like, where did you first hear about me? Oh, it was when you were on DissedMedia with Ben. I'm like, oh wow. Every time I hear that, it reminds me, wow, I've received incredible value by Ben giving me that opportunity, and I'm always going to be on the lookout for ways for reciprocity to give back value to him. But if you don't have products or services for me to do that, or actually products or services for the clients that I'm working with to come buy from you, that you having all of this free stuff doesn't ever serve you financially. And by the way, I'm all for creating all sorts of things that are absolutely free with no desire for any financial remuneration. I do lots of that stuff, but I put my own oxygen mask on first. That was not true in 2008. That's why I almost died in the hospital. And it's why I decided I must stop churning out all of this free content on this network over here. It wasn't free content. I was making $28,000 a year, but I was making $20,000 a year with 30 to 40
you made
hours
more
a week.
when you had two jobs.
Exactly. But I shut all of that free content down so that I could put my own financial oxygen mask on first. Then, once I figured out a business model that gave me margin, I've got way more financial income than is needed within a shorter amount of time. I've freed up X amount of hours every week to go out and now create free community environments to just be available and of service and add value to others without expecting any of that to generate any additional revenue from me, knowing that ultimately some of those people will know how I do generate revenue. They do know about the products and services I have, and some of those people will refer people to what I actually get paid to do today. And people come to me all the time. So I created an in-person workshop titled Building an Online Business, where I basically said to my thousands of people who are following me from my podcast Answer Man brand, I said, listen, so many of you over the years have wanted to launch a podcast. Many of you, I've helped you launch a podcast, and I've watched so many of you do that because you wanted to create a profitable online business as a thought leader in a particular niche. And quite frankly, I'm so tired of seeing many of you give up, exhausted, overwhelmed, and frustrated, and absolutely giving up on your dreams. And I recognize why. Because all of you attempted to do it by starting a podcast, creating free content, hoping to build an audience so that you can ultimately try to figure out how you can earn money from that audience. And I will tell you right now, that is the worst way you could possibly go about building an online business. And I created this workshop to teach you the 11-step formula for building an online business. And you have to understand that step number 8 is create content. And if you skip the first 7 steps, you will go at least years, maybe decades, and never earn a profit in your business. This is guaranteed. I've seen it over and over again. But if you actually follow these first 7 steps and then launch a podcast, and I said, but here's the thing. Some of you are going to come to my workshop and you're going to ask me this question, but what if I already have this content? It's great. It's wonderful that you already have the content.
Now you got to go back.
But you have to go back and figure out the answers to these first 7 things. And the great news is that you do already have an audience. You do already have the experience of how to create the content, and it's going to be so much easier. And not everyone will have to go and find an entirely new audience, though some of you will.
Cliff, that is such amazing advice. And by the way, guilty. And this is the benefit of doing this out in the open and letting people see your mistakes as you make them.
Oh, I made them. By the way, everything I just said, it's how I started mine. The only thing is
you only know it because you made the mistakes, right?
I did, but the thing is I didn't start all of this to launch a profitable business.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, nothing you said in your story was like, "Oh, we're going to do this and make a lot of money."
That was not it at all. But I did realize that after almost dying in the hospital, I think I should probably learn how to make some money and work less hours.
Yeah.
And that began an entire journey of facing some reality that I was not facing. Well, I wasn't even aware of certain realities. And boy, it was a humbling process to go through and see all. It's like, oh my gosh, all of this. If I would have known these things in 2007, oh my gosh, I'd still have a gallbladder. But I will tell you, Ben, if you're interested, I know we talked about an offer for my free opening keynote
Yeah,
address,
yeah.
but I actually turned my building an online business workshop into an online course. The last time I taught it live, I actually recorded me teaching it live here. It was a $2,000 workshop, and if anybody is listening to this, I will give that to you for $499. And also, if you go through all of the material in this course within 90 days, I will give you one complimentary 90-minute one-on-one coaching session with me to go over all of the questions you have related to that course. And the only way to get it is to mention Ben's podcast and email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com.
Cliff, you're amazing, man. I thank you so much for that because, and again, I will make sure that we put this out to everybody. We have a growing audience, such a generous offer. I appreciate that. I will say that the number of things that I have learned about, everything from SEO to social media to the tools that you use to put yourself out there, generating an audience, and granted, our audience isn't as big as some of the guests that we've had on, but we're getting there. We continue to build, and there's strategy around all of this that is necessary to deploy.
And that's why you have to do step number 2 of the 11-step formula for building an online business, which is to create what's called your inventory of value. See, the thing is nobody's ever really sat down and taken an account of what are all of the things that I have available to add to other people that can solve their problems. What is the value that I bring to the table? What are my marketable skills? What is my education? What is my experience? What is that worth? And how can it actually be applied to people's problems and pains? And here's the thing, people also forget step number 1. Determine how much money you must make and how many hours you're willing to work.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. Except unless they go through and figure this out.
Yeah.
But listen, okay, now you've got all of these marketable skills. You've got to stop trying to earn this amount of money by selling this product to this person. That's why you've got to find. You start with step 1, how much money, and then how many hours do you want to work? Okay, great. This is my lifestyle. Step number 2, what marketable value do I have? What skills do I want to develop? What can I put together? And then eventually, step 3, who is my exact ideal customer? Not who's my target audience. Who's my exact ideal customer? What is their problem? What pains are keeping them up at 2 o'clock in the morning? What are their fears, their anxieties, their worries? And are they aware of it? And are they willing to, first, do they have money to pay? Do they have the amount of money to pay what I'm asking them to pay? And would they be willing to pay that amount for me to solve it? And by the way, can I solve it? Step number 2, my inventory of value says, yes, I can solve this.
Right.
Great. See, if you skip all of these steps and you've just got an audience, you won't get to this income. It will be a situation where I have no leverage here.
Yeah, and as you talk about that, the thing I think of is that a lot of podcasts, a lot of the more notable, successful ones, they're not just a podcast. And in fact, oftentimes the host started doing something else, and it's only because of their expert knowledge in what it is they do or their curiosity that they said, oh, I'll do this other thing. But that other thing is really built on top of a foundation of other stuff.
That's exactly it.
Man, Cliff, again, we got a little over time here, but I can't thank you enough for what you've had to share.
My pleasure, Ben. Thank you again for this opportunity. If anybody wants to take me up on building an online business course, like I said, $499. You got 90 days to complete it. If you complete the course and you request the one-on-one session with me, it's my gift to you. full 90-minute session to answer everything you've got going on as it relates to the material in the course.
I appreciate that. And Cliff, just real quick, where do people find more of you? You're in a lot of places, but
yeah, the easiest place is cliffravenscraft.com. And if you're not ready to invest $499, I do encourage you to go over to mindsetanswerman.com/free and watch a 1-hour video that will transform your belief systems, and you'll never be able to see the world the same way that you currently do now.
Cliff, thank you so much for your time. Amazing information, insight. That's so many good things to share.
My pleasure, Ben.
Everybody else, thank you all for checking out another episode of DissedMedia, a startup story. We will be back next week. Another exciting guest on the way. And at some point, we're going to have to do a business update, catch everybody up on things that have been going on with the business. But until then, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to DissedMedia, a startup story. This podcast was produced and edited by Ben Olmos and is a production of DissedMedia Corporation. If you're interested in learning more about anything you heard on this episode, please reach out to us at podcast@dissedmedia.com. You can also get more information about this and other episodes or information about our guests by checking out dailypitch.news, our business and insights publication focused on helping managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do.